Imagine planting something small, attractive, and completely harmless looking. Maybe even something that seems like the perfect solution for your garden. At first, everything feels right. It grows quickly, fills empty areas, covers bare soil, and adds beauty or structure to your space. It might even seem like it's solving problems for you, but then, gradually, things begin to change. It starts spreading beyond where you planted it. It creeps into nearby areas. Your vegetables begin to weaken. Flowers disappear. Roots push into places they shouldn't be. Shade increases. And before you fully notice what's happening, your garden is no longer in your control. Some plants don't just grow, they take over. They compete aggressively, crowd out other plants, spread underground, and dominate everything around them. And once they are established, getting rid of them can take years of effort. Today, you're going to discover 10 invasive plants that can quietly take over your garden, and why you should be careful before planting them. 1. Trumpet vine. Trumpet vine is the kind of plant that immediately catches your eye. Its large, bright, trumpet-shaped flowers attract hummingbirds and pollinators, making it seem like the perfect fast-growing climber for fences, walls, or pergolas. But behind that attractive appearance is a plant that grows with relentless energy and spreads far beyond expectations. Trumpet vine expands in two major ways at the same time. First, it produces a large number of seeds that can be carried by wind and establish new plants in different parts of your garden. Second, and even more aggressively, it spreads through underground runners. These roots move beneath the soil and send up new shoots far away from the original plant. This means you might plant it in one location, and later discover new growth appearing several meters away, in places you never intended. Above ground, the vine grows extremely fast. It climbs by attaching itself to surfaces using aerial roots, gripping onto fences, walls, trees, and structures. Once it takes hold, it continues to expand, becoming thicker and more difficult to manage. Over time, the vines become woody and heavy. What starts as a light, decorative climber can turn into a dense, tangled mass that puts real pressure on whatever it's growing on. Weak supports can bend or break, and even strong structures may require maintenance. When it climbs trees, it creates another problem. The vine spreads across branches and forms a thick layer that blocks sunlight from reaching the tree's leaves. This weakens the tree and interferes with its natural growth. Cutting it back might seem like an easy fix, but it often makes things worse. The plant responds by producing even more shoots, becoming denser and harder to control. Meanwhile, its root system remains active underground, continuously sending up new growth. Even if you remove the main plant, the roots can keep producing shoots for a long time. Because of this, controlling trumpet vine becomes an ongoing effort. It requires repeated cutting, digging, and careful monitoring. Without consistent control, it quickly spreads and takes over surrounding areas. What makes it especially deceptive is how attractive it looks at first. Many gardeners plant it for quick coverage, only to later realize it's a plant that refuses to stay contained. 2. Purple leucostrife. Purple leucostrife is another plant that can be very misleading, especially in gardens with moist or water-rich areas. At first glance, it looks stunning. Tall spikes of vibrant purple flowers rise above the foliage, creating a striking display that attracts pollinators and adds beauty to damp spaces. It seems like an ideal choice for ponds, drainage areas, or low spots in the garden. But beneath that beauty is an extremely aggressive growth pattern. Purple leucostrife produces an enormous number of seeds, not just hundreds or thousands, but sometimes millions from a single mature plant. These seeds are incredibly small and lightweight, allowing them to spread easily through wind, water, animals, or even on shoes and tools. Once they land in suitable conditions on especially moist soil, they quickly germinate and begin growing. Because of the sheer number of seeds, a small planting can quickly turn into a widespread infestation. As it spreads, the plant forms dense, tightly packed stands. These clusters are so thick that they crowd out other plants, leaving little space, light, or nutrients for anything else to survive. In natural environments, this can be especially damaging. Native plants disappear, and with them, the insects and wildlife that depend on them. Even in a home garden, it creates a monoculture where one plant dominates everything. It thrives particularly well in wet conditions, near ponds, ditches, or any area where water collects. In these environments, it spreads even faster and becomes more difficult to control. Another challenge is persistence. Even after removing visible plants, the soil may still contain a large number of seeds waiting to grow. This means new plants can continue appearing long after the original ones are gone. Managing purple leucostrife requires ongoing effort, regular monitoring, repeated removal, and preventing it from producing seeds. Once it goes to seed, the cycle continues and expands. In many regions, this plant is considered invasive and is restricted due to the harm it can cause to ecosystems. It's a perfect example of how something that looks beautiful on the surface can quietly take over and disrupt everything around it. 3. Wisteria. Wisteria is one of those plants that immediately draws attention. When it blooms with long, flowing clusters of purple, blue, or white flowers, it looks almost unreal, like a scene from a painting. But behind that stunning appearance is a plant with remarkable strength and persistence. Wisteria is a woody climbing vine, and unlike softer climbers, its stems become thick, heavy, and extremely powerful over time. As it grows, it doesn't simply rest against structures, it wraps tightly around them, twisting in a spiral motion that acts like a tightening grip. Fences, pergolas, railings, trees, and even parts of buildings can quickly become covered. As the plant matures, its vines thicken and harden, eventually resembling tree branches more than typical vines. When wisteria wraps around trees or shrubs, it can slowly restrict them. This tightening action limits the flow of water and nutrients through the plant, weakening it over time. Growth slows down, the plant becomes stressed, and in severe cases, it may not survive. But strangling isn't the only issue. Weight is another major concern. A mature wisteria can become extremely heavy, especially after rainfall. This added weight can strain or even break structures. Wooden pergolas may crack, fences can bend, and weaker supports may collapse entirely. If allowed to climb unchecked, it can even damage roofs or gutters. Wisteria is also incredibly fast-growing. During the growing season, it sends out long shoots that can extend several meters in a short time. These shoots actively search for support, grabbing onto anything nearby and quickly spreading beyond their intended space. Without regular pruning, wisteria can take over large sections of a garden. Its dense growth creates heavy shade, blocking sunlight from reaching plants below. As a result, smaller plants struggle to survive and eventually disappear. Another challenge is how persistent it is. Cutting it back doesn't eliminate the problem. It often responds by growing even more aggressively. Its root system stores energy, allowing it to recover quickly and continue spreading. To keep wisteria under control, consistent and heavy pruning is necessary, often multiple times per year. Without that effort, it can quickly shift from a beautiful feature into a dominant plant that takes over the space instead of enhancing it. 4. Bindweed. Bindweed is one of the most misleading and frustrating plants a gardener can deal with. At first, it seems harmless. It has soft, trailing vines and small, delicate flowers that resemble tiny morning glories. But once it appears, it rarely disappears easily. What makes bindweed so destructive is how it attacks on two levels at once, both above the ground and deep below the surface. Above ground, bindweed grows rapidly and begins wrapping around anything it touches. Unlike some climbers that loosely attach, bindweed coils tightly, twisting around stems, leaves, and entire plants. This wrapping doesn't just look untidy, it actively restricts growth. As it tightens, it limits the plant's access to light and forces stems into unnatural shapes. Vegetables like tomatoes, beans, and peppers can quickly become tangled and weakened. Flowers get covered, and in severe cases, entire plants can collapse under the pressure. But the real problem lies underground. Bindweed develops a deep and widespread root system that can extend several meters into the soil. These roots act as energy reserves, allowing the plant to survive difficult conditions and regrow repeatedly. Even if you remove the visible plant, the roots remain hidden below. And the most frustrating part is that even a tiny piece of root left in the soil can grow into a new plant. This makes complete removal extremely difficult. In some cases, digging can actually worsen the problem. Breaking the roots into smaller pieces can spread them through the soil, leading to even more plants appearing in different areas. Bindweed is also incredibly persistent. It can survive drought, poor soil, and repeated attempts to remove it. Season after season, it continues to return, gradually expanding its reach. Once established, bindweed becomes a long-term challenge that requires constant attention, repeated removal, and patience over several years. It's not just a simple weed, it's an ongoing struggle that quietly takes time, energy, and control away from your garden. 5. Bamboo. Bamboo is often advertised as one of the fastest growing plants in the world, and that very trait is what makes it risky in a home garden. Many people don't realize that bamboo comes in different types, and the most problematic ones are known as running bamboo. These varieties spread through an aggressive underground network of rhizomes that act like hidden pathways beneath the soil. These rhizomes can travel several meters in a single season, moving silently under lawns, garden beds, walkways, and even barriers. You might plant bamboo in one corner of your yard, yet only to find new shoots emerging far away, sometimes even beyond your property line or in a neighbor's garden. What makes this even more challenging is the speed at which bamboo grows once it appears above ground. During peak growth, shoots can grow several centimeters per day, quickly turning into tall, woody canes within weeks. What starts as a small sprout can rapidly become a dense wall of growth. As bamboo thickens, it forms tightly packed clusters that block sunlight almost completely. Beneath this canopy, the soil becomes dry and depleted as the plant aggressively absorbs water and nutrients. Nearby plants, including vegetables, flowers, and shrubs, begin to weaken and eventually die due to lack of resources. Another hidden issue is structural damage. Bamboo's rhizomes are strong and persistent, capable of exploiting small cracks in hard surfaces. They can push through paving, damage garden edging, and even interfere with foundations, drainage systems, or underground pipes over time. Removing bamboo is where the real challenge begins. Cutting the visible stems doesn't solve the problem. It often encourages even more growth. The true source of the issue lies underground, where the rhizome system continues to store energy and regenerate new shoots. Complete removal usually requires digging deep and removing every piece of rhizome, often repeating the process multiple times. Even a small fragment left behind can restart the entire spread. Because of this, experienced gardeners approach bamboo with caution. If it is planted, it is usually contained with strong root barriers installed deep in the soil to prevent spreading. Without these precautions, bamboo can quickly shift from a striking ornamental plant into a long-term invasive problem that takes over your entire garden. 6. English ivy. English ivy is often admired for its classic, elegant appearance, covering walls, climbing buildings, and creating a lush green atmosphere. However, behind that timeless look is a plant that can quietly dominate and damage everything around it. One of the reasons English ivy is so problematic is its dual growth pattern. It spreads across the ground while also climbing upward, allowing it to take over multiple layers of your garden at the same time. At ground level, ivy forms dense, carpet-like layers that continuously expand. These thick mats block sunlight from reaching the soil, preventing other plants from growing. Over time, entire sections of a garden can become dominated by ivy, with little else able to survive. Above ground, ivy uses aerial roots to attach itself firmly to surfaces. It climbs trees, fences, walls, and structures with surprising strength. Once it begins climbing a tree, it continues upward, wrapping around branches and spreading across the canopy. This creates several serious problems. The dense foliage blocks sunlight from reaching the tree's own leaves, reducing its ability to photosynthesize effectively. At the same time, the added weight, especially when wet or covered in snow, puts stress on branches, increasing the risk of breakage. Over time, trees covered in ivy become weaker and more vulnerable to disease, pests, and storm damage. In severe cases, they may even die or collapse. On buildings, ivy can also cause hidden damage. Its rootlets can enter small cracks in walls, siding, or mortar. As the plant grows, these entry points can expand, leading to trapped moisture, structural weakening, and costly repairs. Another challenge is its persistence. Ivy has a strong and extensive root system, making it difficult to remove completely. Simply pulling it off surfaces rarely eliminates the plant. Even small root fragments left in the soil can regrow and start the cycle again. Additionally, ivy produces berries that are spread by birds, allowing it to appear in new areas far from the original planting. This makes it not just a local issue, but one that can spread over time. Once established, controlling English ivy requires consistent effort cutting, digging, and ongoing monitoring. It's not something that can be solved once and forgotten. What makes ivy particularly deceptive is how slowly it spreads at first. It may seem manageable for a long time, until suddenly it reaches a point where it begins to dominate everything around it. By then, removing it becomes much more difficult, and the impact on your garden may already be significant. 7. Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed is often ranked among the most aggressive and destructive plants in the world, and that reputation is well-deserved. Once it becomes established, it doesn't just compete with surrounding plants. It completely takes over and replaces them. At first glance, it may resemble a tall, bamboo-like plant with broad leaves and rapid growth, but the real danger lies beneath the surface. Underground knotweed spreads through an extensive system of thick rhizomes, woody, root-like stems that can travel several meters in every direction. These rhizomes act as energy reserves, allowing the plant to grow quickly and recover easily even after being cut back or damaged. Above ground, knotweed forms dense, tightly packed stands. Its tall stems and wide leaves create heavy shade that blocks sunlight almost entirely. Under these conditions, most other plants cannot survive, and over time, entire areas become dominated by knotweed alone. One of its most serious traits is its ability to damage structures. The rhizomes are extremely strong and persistent. They can force their way through cracks in concrete, grow beneath foundations, lift paving, and interfere with drainage systems. Even small weaknesses in hard surfaces can be exploited as the plant expands. Because of this, knotweed is not just a gardening issue, and it can become a serious property concern. In some cases, it can reduce property value or require costly professional removal. Trying to eliminate it manually is extremely difficult. Cutting the plant only removes what's visible above ground, while the underground network remains active. In many cases, cutting actually encourages the plant to regrow even more vigorously. Removing it completely requires digging out every piece of the rhizome system, often going deep into the soil and repeating the process multiple times. Even the smallest fragment left behind can regenerate into a new plant. Due to its destructive nature, Japanese knotweed is restricted or regulated in many regions. In some places, planting or allowing it to spread is even prohibited because of the damage it can cause to both ecosystems and infrastructure. Once it appears, it's not something you can ignore. It requires consistent effort, long-term management, and careful control to prevent it from taking over completely. 8. Creeping Jenny. Creeping Jenny is one of those plants that can easily mislead even experienced gardeners. At first, it seems like the perfect ground cover, low-growing, fast-spreading, and covered in bright green or golden leaves that create a soft, lush carpet across the soil. It quickly fills empty spaces and gives the garden a neat, finished appearance. But that rapid growth is exactly what makes it problematic. Creeping Jenny spreads by sending out long, trailing stems that root wherever they touch the ground. Each contact point becomes a new plant, which then continues to spread outward. This creates a chain reaction, allowing it to cover large areas in a very short time. As it expands, it forms thick, dense layers over the soil. While this may look attractive from above, conditions underneath become unfavorable for other plants. Sunlight is blocked, airflow is limited, and smaller plants are gradually smothered. Young seedlings and low-growing flowers are especially vulnerable. They simply can't break through the dense mat, and over time, they disappear. Even more established plants can weaken as creeping Jenny spreads around them, competing for water and nutrients. In moist or nutrient-rich soil, the plant becomes even more aggressive. It grows faster, spreads further, and establishes itself more firmly. Areas near water sources, irrigation systems, or low-lying spots in the garden are particularly at risk. Another difficulty is how easily it regrows. Even small fragments left behind after trimming or removal can take root again and form new growth. This makes complete removal challenging unless done very carefully and thoroughly. It also tends to spread beyond its intended area. It can creep into lawns, invade garden beds, and move along pathways, gradually disrupting the structure and design of your garden. Keeping creeping Jenny under control requires regular trimming and clear boundaries. Without consistent maintenance, it can quickly shift from a decorative ground cover into a dominant plant that takes over everything around it. What begins as a soft, attractive layer can slowly turn into a thick, overwhelming blanket that's difficult to remove.